See if we've got everything intact. Let me know as soon as you guys can hear me. Uh-oh. I have one problem. Yikes. Gotta plug in the hard drive. All right, that recording is on. Let's get that recording on. Okay, there you go. Top of my head. Head cam. Sorry. All right, how are we doing? There we go. Audio is good. My cappuccino machine is doing its thing. Come on, cappuccino. I got it. All right, let me go and okay, what am I doing? YouTube. You know when you go to your phone and then your phone has something else that it wants you to do? Drives me crazy. Your videos. So where's my live? Day 4. Okay, hold on guys, I just need to get to my live. And we are streaming. You guys can see me in all the right places. Let's go to the live room and make sure. Yes, good. Okay, and an artist's Kryptonite. We are in good shape. Okay, guys, so as a reminder, the anatomy class, like it's 11 o'clock right now. Okay, the anatomy class is open for registration. You go to kingslien.art. Link is in my bio on Instagram, over at YouTube. Pretty easy to get to. The registration is open for basically 3 more days. We are going to close it Sunday night. And then I'll have the whole week to get all the live classes going. And then we start the first live class on the 31st. The live class, the first time you buy a live class, it comes with everything else, so it's really the best deal. And then after that, you just get live classes, you get mentorship as you want it, all right? And let me just see if I can't get, for some reason, it's not. I wanted this on my YouTube here in case so I can move around a little bit. Oh, it just needed to be restarted. Okay, that's fine. So that's doing its thing. We'll leave that here. We have our camera. Can we talk about legs and feet today, not just hands and feet? I know somebody might be like, Ryan, I really struggle with hands, and I get that. The principles are the same, which is what everybody says. But there are some things in the leg that I really want to show. And then so my thinking is legs and feet, and if we're able to get that faster, then we will at the end of the day. We'll go in and kind of showcase that. But let me know in comments if you're okay with that. I'm going to go over here and read the comments. Let me know if that kind of works for you guys. Andre, are there more instructors than me? No, not right now, although that is I've thought about it. I just wanted to be doing most of the feedback right now, so I saw your guys' questions. But it is highly possible that we'll bring somebody in. But probably the next round, because it is a lot to teach, so. I am getting a little tired, but then I don't develop some of the new strategies that I've been developing. Okay. All right, let's go. Okay, There's a couple of things that we've got set up here. The camera on me that'll come through when I need to make a point. If my audio ever drops, let me know in the comments. I keep an eye. I got a big screen right here for them. Right behind me, I have a maquette. And so if I need to, you can see them right here. If I need to go in and start to illustrate something with actual clay, let's switch cameras, with the actual clay, I'll switch to that camera. Not the best setup, like it needs that. It can't be like like a zoom. I need to move the camera so it's facing another direction, but it's what I was able to do this morning. So there we go. All right, but we may get in and do some actual clay work. The question I get all the time, or at least it seems to be implied in everything that people, and some of the things people post, which is that there is this division between digital and clay. And I can tell you with 100% confidence, because you know, I'm older, right? So I'm 52, which means I was learning when YouTube wasn't even a thing. It didn't even exist in a startup kid's eye, right? So are they the same? Are they different? Is ZBrush special? Is it cheating? Is there some unique advantage to clay that this one has? And it's all bullshit, straight. I mean, all it is one artist telling you their preference. It's all it is. It's all it will ever be, right? It's all it is. If you see somebody who's like, this clay is real art, well, just say, well, okay, cool. That's their preference. That's their mind leaking out into the real world. At the core, sculpture is a way of seeing, full stop, okay? It is a way of seeing. So to be a sculptor, you don't just have to have hands, right? Lots of people have hands. They go for their first day of sculpting and they realize they're not a sculptor yet. Because sculpture is about seeing. It is about, and seeing, by the way, isn't something your eyes do. If you haven't read up on neurobiology or The Biology of Seeing, a great book, the common conception is that the eyes are these like cameras that just, you know, they better resolution cameras. Seeing is a mental process, right? So the easy way to explain this right now is that right now in everybody's vision, everybody, there's a little spot, pure black, can't see it. Look for that spot. Just move your eyes around and see if you can find that spot. That spot is where the optical nerve goes back into the brain. So in the back, it's like a radar dish, right? There's all these receptors, there's all this stuff in the back, but then there's this little hole as the nerve goes through the skull to the brain. That hole has no receptors. So that means that there is a part of your vision that you have no data for. Try to find it. You can't. It's impossible because your brain puts something there, right? Like, you know, in Photoshop, AI, generative fill, your brain was doing this a long ass time ago. It's nice of AI to catch up. Your brain is filling in that spot with things that it thinks should go there. And I like to extrapolate this and say, your brain is lying to you. And your brain has always lied to you. And it will continue to lie to you. What you think you see is not the truth. That's why we educate, so that we can get to levels of truth, right? I'm not going to say there's one truth. I'm not going to say anybody's right. Levels of truth. And that's learning art. That's learning anatomy, you know? You're learning levels of truth, levels of knowledge, right? And so when we go and we start to work the form, we start to sculpt somebody or something, we are using our hands, but our mind most of all, and the way in which we conceive of form. When you start to conceive of form, that's when you become a sculptor, okay? And that's my goal in life, is to teach you sculpting. And I've been doing this, guys, like 20-something years. Like, I started at Pixelogic. I was their #3 employee, and I started there 2009, something like that, right? And then I was teaching before that as well. So I've been doing this a long time. And I've been doing this at a high level, at a low level. I've taught everybody, right? I've taught at ILM, EA, Ubisoft. I went to EA Shanghai and helped them design pipelines for this thing coming out of the wall, right? And they didn't know how to do it with normal maps at that point. It was hard because it needed to come out of the wall, and normal maps, they only do so much. So I helped them with processes like that, right? Pirates of the Caribbean, the Kraken's Arm. I helped a tiny bit. Those artists were just geniuses. So I worked with them on how to make that work in ZBrush and some of the problems with ZBrush. I was doing this with Avatar 1, when there was a whole crew of people that basically lived in a section of James Cameron's house. And not lived, but they spent all their time there. And long time ago, basically. So there is no difference between digital and traditional for me. Because at the end of the day, it's the mind that sculpts, not the tool. ZBrush is a tool. Here's another tool. Here's another tool, right? They're all just tools. So your job is to figure out what works for you. And what works for me is ZBrush. I mean, I'm of course biased. I invested an enormous amount of my life in this program. And first working there, and then later ZBrush workshops, and then later teaching artists. I mean, I've invested a lot. And I burn out, but I'm back. I'm focused on this, have been for the last year. I'm excited to help you guys grow and to grow as well, right? Let me pause here. We have, because we're here at X Space, people drive cars in, so there's a CO2 fan. How is my audio while this thing is going on? It's basically clearing out car fumes. Not the best idea. But tell me, how are we doing? How's the audio? Andre, have you worked in VR for... I have worked in VR for sculpting, but I couldn't get it to work for me. I just didn't like the lack of haptic response. And on top of that, I helped build ZBrush, so I already know everything, so learning another system, I'm just biased against that. Okay, you guys, audio is good, good, good. Okay, great. I have a new mic on this, so. All right, Anatomy for Artists is open now. Let's get ZBrush open. We're gonna cover leg and foot today. And yesterday I felt I talked too much. And there was way too much explainer. And that's always a problem in these kinds of events. So I'm going to shift my approach today. And I'm going to, let's not do that. I'm actually just going to get in and start sculpting. This is actually, part of this is in the anatomy class. That's already there. Okay. So we're going to start with the scan, which is it's an old scan, still high quality scan. This is actually a scan you get with the course so that you can study. I mean, look at all of that cheddar. There is so much good stuff here. Hold on, I gotta start Epic Pen. Yeah, look at that wall of the rib cage right there, right? There is so much good stuff happening. So beautiful. Serratus anterior. Then you've got these bumps, right, that you'll see all over. Remember, if we go back to the walnut stage, it's fascinating. I love this. This is the interplay of the intercostal ribs and the external oblique muscles. It's a fascinating area. So great work. I'm going to work from this today. It is in the course itself, so it is not something you're going to be able to just follow along while we're watching, you know, this YouTube video. You'd have to get into the course, and then if you are in the course, by all means, grab this and follow along if you want. All right. Now let's get back in and see how we're doing. Just a little fan noise. Okay, you like the explanations, Tank? Good. Andre, do you have a favorite sculptor, and would it be from classic? I'm schizophrenic when it comes to all that stuff. All right, so I'm going to shortcut a few things that are in here. Let me see if I've got, let me see what I've got. Why does it keep doing that? Yeah. We're gonna aim for an end result like this today. Okay, this form of anatomy, this form of sculpting is for me a little bit Bridgman-esque, a little bit of Richard McDonald. Do you guys know Richard McDonald? So I ran across his mime in a gallery in San Francisco, this guy right here, and I about lost my shit. I couldn't believe that somebody could actually do that, and it was what I wanted to do. And he's just made some amazing work since then, but he's really one of the seminal people in kind of taking figurative art in another direction. It never really surpassed the circus theme or the dance theme, unfortunately. But anyways, fantastic, amazing form. Look at all that anatomy. It's just crazy. So you'll see my sculpture is going to be somewhere between Richard, somewhere between George Bridgman drawings. I really like this here, like this. You see, I'll work on structure and volume and mechanistic kind of approaches, not so much of the finish that Richard has. I aspire to it. But at the end of the day, it should be explainable and relatively clear for you to kind of move forward with. All right, so this is going to be my goal, is to replicate this and to replicate this in a series of steps that you can use as well. All right, so it all starts with our model and making sure that this is scaled. You can always go into deformation and just hit unify. That just keeps everything working nicely. Now, last class I used Z-spheres, and then within that, let's go ahead and show everything. I scaled the Z-spheres down. Where are we? No, scale. And we built the Z-spheres out from there. This has problems in this particular approach, so I'm not going to actually do that today. As you guys might have saw, it takes some time to get your head around how things might work. So we're gonna go by how things might work. Let me not be vague. It takes some time establishing planes. So first you have to establish the volumes, then you have to establish the planes, and then from the planes, you have to then go into the structure, right? The groupings of structure, right? Structure is a relationship between parts. You don't have structure if you don't have parts. Very important. So we're gonna look at structural masses of the leg as well. There's quite simply adductors in the middle, quads, hamstrings, like those, there's three. Remember the rule of three. Quadricep, or the lower leg, has very similar structure as well. But we'll look at structural masses to kind of establish that. And so it's actually easier if we, instead of just starting with Z-spheres, which are an arbitrary mesh. It's easier if we start with a volume-centric approach, okay? And so that's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to append a polymesh star. And this light is bothering me. I wonder if I can kill it. We're going to initialize, we're going to turn this into a Q cube. And do you remember the measurements of the Q cube, or of the pelvis? So we're going to set this to 1, and then I think it is Z. I'm going to set this to just 0.8, okay? And so, of course, you know, that's not the right size. Oops, I just completely screwed up my sculpt. So because this model had no subdivision levels, I was able to initialize it. All right, that's better. That's what we want. So we're going to go 1, and then we're going to go 0.8. Okay. Again, I'm doing this to establish the proportional relationships. Once you've done that, scale it any way you want at that point. Okay. But we're going to start with the pelvis and start by understanding, you know, how the pelvis fits inside of the body. And so remember that the pelvis is 1 head high. And so at 1 head high, it's going to go into the body quite a bit. And that's ultimately what we want to be studying, you know. Like, let me see if I can bring Lanteri's sculpture out. I'm going to put it on the armature, or on the sculpting stand. I don't know if the camera may not be focused on that. Right. Okay. So when we are looking at this, hopefully it's not as blown out. So the screen over here and over here shows it quite blown out. But I looked at the YouTube before, and it was better. So when we're looking at this mass that's sitting right here, we see gluteus medius, gluteus maximus. We see TFL coming in. Where's the TFL? We see the TFL here. Look, the medius is coming all the way around, and he's separated the TFL and moved the TFL forward. And then you've got this little line. It looks like it's a line. Is that the ilium? Like, it comes straight across from the ASIS to the posterior superior iliac spine, PSIS. ASIS in the front, anterior, PSIS in the back. Bum, bum. And they're right there, straight across. What's in between those, though? Remember, there's this entire lip that's moving all the way up. Do I have the bones here? I have the bones. Let's look at the bones. They're just buried somewhere. This might be the horse bones. Yeah, that's the horse bones. No, it looks like I put the bones at home. My daughter had a boyfriend. She got a boyfriend for a little bit. Scared the crap out of me. And so I had this collection of bones. So I put it in a box somewhere very obvious, and I said, Aisha's last boyfriend. Somewhere where anytime he came by, he could, see it. So that's at home, currently serving as a prop for the safety of my family. All right, but now when we're looking at this, we have these points. It even looks here like he's kind of messed this up a bit. Camera's right there. He's messed this up a bit. But what you always want to look for, and we'll do this, is where does this side plane break? So it's going to go straight up. Let's do something. I always love Dan Thompson's videos like this. This isn't as good as his, but when you see his videos, you'll see he'll put a line. And so you're going to put a line and say, all right, where does it break? And it looks like it breaks right here, right? So the ilium is going to go all the way up to that point where it breaks, okay? That's the important kind of piece that we need to keep in mind, because now when we're sitting here looking at this guy, we're like, hey, okay, ASIS, PSIS, right? Notice that the pelvis here is tilted because he's got this sweep, right? So the pelvis is tilted a little bit more than usual. Let me look at this. Okay, cool. So it's the wings of the ilium are going to go up like that, right? And if you guys ever want an anatomy figure, my anatomy figure ships with ZBrush. So it's just called, oh wow, they're so nice. They put the Ryan Kingslien anatomy model in there. It's there in your copy of ZBrush. So it's old, no question about it, and it's low res, but you can take a look and you can see, all right, ASIS, PSIS, and then shoop to about halfway, and then it'll just cover, right? And again, remember, we talked about this last time, kind of halfway. Plus or minus, right? People change. You also have to be able to see this from the top. So you see that with that halfway point, that's also, in fact, it should move a little bit like this. I need to rotate that. And then it comes and dives inwards, but before doing that, splashes out like that. So the proper curve should be something like that. This way you have this on both sides. You have your intestines, you have all the body organs, all of that stuff happening in here. And then you've got this brace in the back that supports it. And childbearing, you know, all that stuff. Close, close. Okay, there you go. So you guys can always get access to that. What happened? There we go. So now let's turn this one on. Solo off. And let's see if we can try to make sense out of it. Oh, and then remember, I don't know, I told you guys last time, I'll just do this as a quick schematic. ASIS and pubic symphysis. I should do that on the other side. So pubic symphysis in the middle. It's going to come up to ASIS. Then it comes down. You got your sit bones. This breaks out usually. Comes around with little Mickey Mouse ears, and then this becomes your sacrum. Right? So ASIS, PS, about 1/3. So that means that if we're looking here, we'd say we should aim to have ASIS there and the pubic symphysis there. Now, what that does is that tells us right off the bat, hey, you know, we can find the pubic symphysis, we can find the ASIS, and those are going to be our landmarks for where to position this crazy cube. Let's go into the cube, and maybe what we want to do is divide this. So I'm actually, and you don't need to do this. This is, I'm kind of, I'm doing this more for educational purposes, but I used a bevel on an edge loop to just roughly create thirds. And I eyeballed that. Let's say we're fine with that. I am not fine with those colors though, so get rid of that crap. And then let's rotate. That's not the right button. So I'm gonna rotate, so I've got roughly the same amount of belly. I'm gonna rotate. And I like to turn perspective off for this. So I keep hitting, come on. It keeps hitting the wrong one. I'm gonna go and rotate to what I think about right there. What I really want to, another thing I really want to point out here, by the way, is that the butt structures are back structures. and that the ilium and the pelvic unit, all of that stuff, it's all back. Because look at how much there is, the belly in the front. So this ASIS is back. It doesn't reach, it shouldn't reach unless somebody's emaciated, or you're talking about a supermodel, which is, you know, being paid for being emaciated, whatever. Normal, healthy, you're going to have some body fat, some visceral fat in there, padding things around. So I like to position it. Let me go into my brush. And I'll say, yeah, that's good. I'm looking at the back, I'm looking at the front. Okay, now let's rotate this. Voila. Okay, so that I think is okay. It's not a bad idea when you find that you go in and you hit front, because now you can always do a back, and you can. And I feel like I'm off a little bit. That's fine, I think. Okay, and then now we can say, all right, there's a front. Now we want to try to find this line, and we want to match that line with ASIS. Okay, so our rotation's not horrible. We need to probably pull this side up a little bit and let this side drop down. Not a ton, but, you know, more than I've got. And these are the little things that I swear, where is my orientation off? Okay. Deal with it, Ryan. Suck it up. Okay, I'm going to go backwards. There you go. See how I do that? I can always pull it forward once I have that lined up, but that's pretty sweet. Okay, and then that's my pubic symphysis. So, but remember, the pelvis is in the back. It's not here. It's in the back. And wow, look at that. I mean, does it really go that high up? That's pretty crazy. If you sit and think about that, like, that's pretty nuts. So let's think. ASIS, PSIS, pubic symphysis. It's going to go about, yeah, it goes pretty close. Do that proper, Ryan. Then that's going to extend out like that. There you go. All right, now does that look like that could work? 8th rib, 9th rib, 10th rib, 11th and 12th. Remember the 2 fingers? Do you believe it? What do you think? Believable? Crazy, but believable, is it? That's what we have to train, because our mind is lying to us. And your job as a sculptor and part in your training is to discover these things for yourself. You know, become curious, discover them for yourself. All right, so I like this. I'm gonna go ahead and do a few adjustments to this guy. One, I'm going to insert edge loops here. And I'll do the same here. But in general, the pelvis is more of a bucket. So I'm going to start to get that bucket working. On top of that, I want the sides to kind of billow out, and I want these points to move in. better to do that straight on. Bop, bop. Here, let me line that up for you guys a little bit better. Okay, and then let's move that point in. Remember, that's the silhouette. We have the ASIS. This goes to a high point that drops in. Get back. I preemptively created that. It's a little bit of a problem. And pull that out a little bit. These also have to dive in. Remember, we were looking at the top? Okay, and then geometry. It's a little lopsided. I'm sculpting it in this mode. There you go. That's a little better. And then those are the sit bones. Okay, now let's just position that a little bit better. And say, all right, well, we have a rough pelvic shape. Find the pubic symphysis, find the ASIS. Yes, I'm okay with a structure like that, right? This is just me kind of generalizing a few things. Andre's asking, so you work with symmetry off? Well, I mean, you saw the problem when I worked with it off. I mean, in clay you don't have symmetry, right? So if you can use symmetry, use it. And so I may have initially sculpted a pelvic muscle with symmetry or bone with symmetry on and given it to you, but it just didn't bother me. So it's not a function of I go with it off or on. It's just I wasn't bothered because it's not a significant piece. So, you know, there we go. All right, now let's go ahead and do some more. How long is the leg? Does anybody know? And we're talking one head units here, okay? So we're going to do initialize, and for the upper thigh, so remember the proportional guides. Let's do it over here. How long is the leg? So we're going to say essentially it's 4 heads. What's here at 2? That's the top of the knee, right? So then how long is the thigh? How tall is the knee? And then how tall is the lower leg? And how tall is the foot? These are measurements that you want to have in your mind, all right? So the knee itself is going to be 0.5 heads tall. That's a pretty good rule of thumb. So I'll just do the math. The foot is going to be about 0.3 heads tall, 1/3 essentially, 0.333. Okay, so we can just do the math. This is basically 2 heads here at this point. So that becomes 1.75, let's say. And then this becomes 4, 2, so that becomes 2 becomes, why am I losing my brain here? 1.5? Is that accurate? 1.67. So now we're going to build a leg using those proportional systems, and I'll try to leave them up right now. And so now the big dilemma is whether or not I want to use a cylinder or a cube. And so I don't know exactly, but I prefer to work with planes. Let's go to geometry and turn dynamic subdivision off. And then we need to go to geometry, size. We size everything at 1. But we're going to size this at 1.5. And then how, let's say, oh, there we go. Whew, I got it back. How wide is it here? And I'm going to say the knee is a cube of 1.5 by 1.5 by 1.5. So I'm going to set the overall thigh at 1.5 at about 0.7. Let's do 0.6. There you go. Let's say that's my thigh. And then what did I do? I did it again. I didn't select this, or I thought I did. So let's redo that. Cube, geometry. Set it to 1, 1.5, 1.6, 1.6. All right, that's my thigh. Ignore this guy. Ignore the pelvis. None of that matters. We're making a basic generic leg. Now we're going to append another star. Okay, that star is going to absolutely become a cube. That cube is absolutely going to become 1, but then I'll say 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Okay, that's my knee. Now, I'm not going to mess around. I'm just going to do things as structural as possible. Let's go. Say initialize Q cube. Come down here and say, okay, set that to 1. We're going to set it to 1.67. 67. I got to say it. I got to tell my daughter now that I got to say it. And she'll tell me I am so lame. But she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's young. All right, there we go. Now that cube, let's go in here, set that to 1, and we're going to set the height to 0.3. We're going to set probably that to 0.3, 0.4. I think 0.4 is going to work. And 0.8 long. I'm guessing at that. You know, everybody's got different size feet, right? So now let's arrange these fools. So we've got our thigh at the top. We're going to take our knee and just move that knee down. Make sure perspective is off. Okay, then we're going to take the lower leg. And then we're going to take the foot. Really got to figure that out. And move that foot forward. And then and there we go. But this doesn't look very good, right? What is the first thing that this thing is missing? Any thoughts? And let me merge these all down so that we can see them all in one. There you go. So if that's the leg as this basic generic thing, what are we missing? What's step 1 of what we are missing? All right, let's go and say polygroup this. Group visible. Don't do that, Ryan. Auto group. There you go. I'm going to go into this piece, and we're just going to give it gesture, right? And I'm going to go into this piece, and I like to make this guy face an entirely different direction. Okay, and then this guy, I like to make them, and I'm going to switch out of gyro, give it a little angle like that. Okay, why am I doing that? S-curve, right? But what about the foot? Well, everything should be in opposition to everything, right? So that would mean we should rotate that this way. So if this guy's moving this way, then this guy needs to move that way. Because now the energy flows, comes down, and the knee you could do straight up and down, but I fake this because I love this, what it adds. And so it just helps the energy dissipate like electricity. Flowing through there, right? Now, we've got to make a few more adjustments to the crazy. And at this point, you could use move topological brush, but I'm going to just go back and forth here. And I like to add even a little bit more crazy to it, right? Okay, good. Now, we come into the thigh. We can add some of its specific characteristics. Not doing too shabby. Let's get some of the foot. The foot we know. Actually, we can do this the easy way. / not the easy way. And I'm going to use move topological here. But we have a problem, right? We have gesture established from one perspective. Super cool. But what the heck is going on here? What's the gesture of the thigh? And so we need to have that same S-curve come through. The hamstrings are pretty much straight up and down. The quadriceps are going to kind of push outwards. And then this is bone. So then the gastrocnemius moves this way. And I'm going to sneeze. Sorry, guys. Wow. All right. So again, dynamic opposition is our rule. Flat, flat, push out one way, push out the other way, dissipate the energy. Dynamic opposition. So now, move all that forward, move all that backwards. And again, I'm using move topological here. And I'm actually going to move, the entire structure moves backwards. Even the knee I'm going to have tilt backwards. Okay, and then that foot, that's got to go back too. Okay, there. Now we start to have the fundamental structure of the leg. And so this is the beginning of the planar construction, right? And so we can do a lot of things at this point, but I like to use this just for volume, which I've already kind of. Volume generally is like, here's the sphere, the cylinder, but I'm really collapsing volume in plane. And so this is the part that gets hard to teach. It's not hard for me to teach, it's hard for you to learn because certain stages collapse. And that's part of mastery, is at the end of the day, you're collapsing stages left, right, and center. So that, 3 strokes, it takes somebody else like 100 to do that. Because you've collapsed all those 100 strokes into 3 intentional, trained strokes. That requires the work that we're doing here, which is, you start to collapse these volumes into planes, and the planes into structures, which is almost where I'm going to go with this next. Because, let me show you this. Because the actual volume of the upper thigh, for example, is a cube into an oval. And that's actually, and then we can do a little cube for the knee. That's the same structure that exists for the lower leg. You have meat, bone, meat, bone. Where else does that structure exist? Where else? All my lights have turned off. So, where else does this structure exist? You got meat in a rectangle, sort of. You got meat in the bone, sort of, right? You have the oval of the chest. You have the square of the space in between, or even the square of the pelvis. The pelvis could be seen as a square going into the oval of the chest. The neck, one form going into the volume of the head. Nature repeats. Evolution finds a system, and it hammers that system home. And if you learn that system, or even if you start to just get a hint of this secret, you start to win. So that's what we started with in terms of pure measurement. This is what we started to do when we started to add a little bit of gesture into the conversation. Now we can go in and say, all right, well, if I divide these, what can I make out of them, right? And so I'm not going to divide it just like that, because we have to modify this a little bit, so I will inset that. I like to keep this as square as possible. I don't know if I'm going to do the sides. Let's see. And I like to do that for the back as well. Probably not a bad idea to do that for the bottom, so we make that a nice and flat little piece. And then now if we divide this, we should have something that's a little bit more cohesive for what we want in terms of our ultimate planes and volume structure. And let's do auto group. I hate when it creates those extra groups. Okay. So that is basic bare bones volumes and planes of the leg. We're going to cover planes all the time. It's something that we're always doing planes, okay? But this is the structure. Now, with this is going to be enough for me to go in and actually put the pelvis with the legs and then pose it. And then from that pose, go in and start to do the structural masses, okay? Any questions before I move forward? Let me know. I'm going to switch over to the cam, but ask the questions. I'm going to look over here for in the comments section. Andres, I don't understand Z-Modeler. You can use anything you want. No, that doesn't matter. Z-Modeler was just Ofer's, just his thing. Okay, so I am going to let's duplicate this. So I'm going to delete lower, mirror and weld. That's a problem. When that happens, you got to go to deformation and you say mirror it, and then you go mirror and weld. Well, maybe you just got to move it off the center. That might help as well, Ryan. Okay, there's our legs. We've got 2 legs. I'm going to reconstruct the subdivision history, so we've got some stuff here I don't really need. Yeah, that's the lowest I need. And so now I have a pelvis in there. Let me get this in with the pelvis a little closer to it. And let's show our model. I might just go down here to deformation. Does unify help? It helps, but I still got to do work. That's fine. If you really want to test it, it could be testing that. That looks pretty reasonable. So what is the size? Okay, now I'm going to just test it. It's not long enough. That'll work. See how this is not, there's no hard, fast rule here. Because this guy's originally not scaled. We could, if you guys really, if you really want to know, you can come in, use transpose line, say grab from there to there, let's say. That should be, yeah. Maybe that works. Then you go to preference and you go to transpose units. And it's just an arbitrary number. You just say, all right, I'm going to set the calibration distance to 1. So that becomes 1 head. Once you know that that's 1 head, now you could go and say, all right, so bottom of the, let's go here, let's go into our transpose. That should be 2 heads. And it is. That's 2 heads. So that system works too, but that assumes that the model is 8 heads, which they're not, because 8 heads is not a normal biological occurrence. But it works. Looking through the comments here. Okay, yeah, you guys talking about Z-Modeler, great. Okay, so now with that, I'm going to say, all right, I have my pelvis. I need to start to rotate and get a sense out of these guys. So let's go put it at the mass. Okay, rotate those. Let's rotate them so that they fit the pelvis. Yeah. Move them forward a little bit. All right, so they're basically hitting the pelvis. I like that. Now I'm going to go in and I need to auto group them so I can affect the sides individually. And so now we would go and let's just try this with split on first to see if we can get it. And I don't like to use gyro. Some people do. I don't. I like to. Use transpose. I totally get if you don't understand transpose. I didn't. It was one of the last tools I got to help build, so, you know, it was one of those examples of Ofer just He didn't want to do what people had already been doing for years. He really just wanted something new. And we have ZBrush because of that desire of his. Actually, I just made a mistake. I rotated the foot. What moves, does the foot actually rotate? Like, it rotates a little, but that's not the primary thing that rotates. The primary thing that rotates is the actual thigh. The rotation happens at the pelvis. So when you do this, you got to make sure, don't shortchange yourself. Do the rotation proper. Get everything to rotate. What is the angle of that knee? Can you see the box in the knee, right? Looks like I got a little bit more rotation to do. Yep, that's not too shabby. Then you might have to adjust this guy. Just to get him to sit on the ground a little bit better. Check it in a couple of views. Just practicing with my eye here. All right. Now, of course, check it, but not too shabby. Need to move that out a little bit more. Get that beautiful gesture. Look at that. And then the thigh does the rotation. So it's not a bad idea to come in here and rotate a portion of the thigh back. See that? There we go. Okay. All right, so does this make sense? Does this seem to make a little bit of sense, guys? Let me see in the comments. I'm going to do the same thing really quick, but I'm not going to talk it through with the other leg. Okay, Z modeler, good, good, good. Okay, okay. Yeah, okay, good. No questions? If there's questions, put them out. I got my phone right here. I got this giant ass screen right here. And we're going there. All right, now let's do this next leg, this next one. Boom, 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 boom. Rotation happens where? Rotation happens at the pelvis. There you go. Okay, now here's a tricky part, and this always confuses people. Are you looking? You paying attention? This is the tricky part. Does the knee rotate? How do we account for the knee in the rotation? I said I wasn't going to explain it, and I have to explain it. All right, so what I do, this is what I do. I rotate the mass of the knee. This is just the easiest way, in my view, to make this kind of work. You have to rotate it, and then move it up a little bit. Now, if we were to block this out, like let's just say talk about the knee itself, right? So I talked about the knee as a cube. That cube is divided in half. In the top part is the patella. And then at the very base of that, the tibial tuberosity. All right, and so what this is composed of is you've got the femur at the top. And it has this little dent. And so its bone will come in like this and then veer off that way. So that's assuming that this is the right leg, okay? And then you've got the head of the tibia in the bottom half. And then the tibia kind of veers off and you've got the line of the tibia here, okay? Right there, at the bottom of that square, there's something called the tibial tuberosity. You gotta know that because it's really important from a front view as well. But you can imagine, you know, let's say there's like a top plane, and then there's this little wedge form. So if I explain this from a side view, let's go ahead and look at that from a side view. The side view is also a cube. It's also divided in half. And in the front, you also have the patella. So let's do the patella in white this time. You have the patella protecting the open space of the knee. You get a little lip right in there, gets a little lippy, and then this kind of veers off to the top. And then in this articulating point, you can see it does not take up the full distance. You're going to have the head of the tibia. And then it projects out, not all the way, it doesn't fill that space, but it projects out, and that becomes your tibial tuberosity, and that's where your tendon of the patella connects. And so this whole structure is protecting the joint. The patella, the tendon, is all protecting that joint. It's protecting it from the rectus femoris, right? And the quadriceps. All the quadriceps attach right there. My wife was doing some exercise and she, started feeling pain in her knee. And we had to really just pressure on the rectus femoris to get that thing to relax. And then it was the vastus lateralis, right? And so these muscles that lead up here, they are huge muscles, powerful muscles. And they're acting not on the femur, they're acting on the tibia. So you got to have something that all this pressure is protecting the joint. And that's what the patella does. It's also what all the fat pads in there do as well. So let's exit out of that. Then let's go show white. Then the tibia comes down here like this. That's horrible. It doesn't do that. It goes down, and that's the line of the tibia right there as well. And then it kind of carves in, and voila. And of course, in the back half, if you were to draw half, depending on what side you're looking at, this becomes the fibula. Right in there. That's the basic structure of the knee itself. I did charge my wife, actually. I'm about to send her to collections. She's refusing to pay, tell you. But, hold out hope for me. All right, now, when we look at this leg bending, what happens? So, the important thing to know about what happens when a knee bends, like it has here, is that the tibia actually hasn't really changed, has it? The tibia still takes up half of that space, and well, it ain't changed. What has changed is that the oval of the femur. So remember, the femur was kind of an oval from the side view. So normally the femur would be an oval like that, with the patella right there. But now, and that's pointing straight up. So now as the leg starts to point in another direction, the oval starts to rotate. So it will rotate a little bit more like that. And also, as it rotates, it actually moves forward, right? So this is, my wife also had an injury here. There was nothing I could do, so I wasn't able to charge her for this. But there's tiny little muscles, tendons, I forget exactly what they are, but there's tiny, I think they're tendons. They're tiny little tendons in there on the bottom that connect. And so as this rotates, as the bottom part, so when you're standing straight up, they stretch this way. So they're stretched. When you're standing, they're stretched. And then when you rotate, they, just because of the nature of them, they start to pull this bottom part inwards. So there's a rocker motion where that bottom part rocks into place, so to speak. So with that done and said, that means that the oval is probably about like that. And the patella is still there, locked to the tibial tuberosity. The patella is still there protecting the opening. Any questions about that? Allie, it was 150 I charged her. I thought that was reasonable too. She didn't. But, you know, again, we'll just have to let it all play out in court. Family court. I'll have the kids preside. I'll lose, of course. But at least I'll have my day in court. Now, this rotation is kind of a little crazy, and then also notice, you know, if we come, no, don't do that. Yeah. See how I'm extending that, shortening that? So maybe my measurements were off for the original. Maybe not. It doesn't, I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter. Just, you got to start with a measurement. That's the most important thing. And then a nice little trick, you know, you don't want this little wedge of form right in there. So what I do is just come into this and just pull the back up. That way I can get a little bit nicer of a slip of form in there. And it's not like just this little open wedge that I got to sculpt. So just a silly little trick. Let's move topological. I'm going to move, this is the, that's an actual anatomical form. Let's get a little bit of bulk in there. There you go. This isn't a thing that's really important to me, but I want to have this. I'm always looking for ways to offset, to move this one here and that one there. Always looking, because offsets are how you create beautiful rhythms. Let's turn solo off, and I'm going to look in split for this. Yeah, so you see my orientation. This is the wrong direction. I could adjust the thigh. I don't really want to adjust the thigh. So I'm going to adjust the lower leg. And I put a bone, just a transpose, I put a temporary bone in the center. Okay. Not adjusting the foot, adjusting some other part. That's, you really got to keep that in mind. You don't want to be in the position of just constantly adjusting parts. Cool. All right. There. It looks reasonable to me in terms of a structural approach. Maybe we can add the pelvis in there. How many subdivision levels do I have? Okay, 2 subdivision levels. So let's go in here and turn dynamic. Where'd it go? right there, but we'll divide it, so there's 2. If they're the same subdivision level, when you merge them down, you keep the levels. Otherwise, it deletes the levels. Let's go and auto group that. And then now I can modify this pelvic structure a little bit. I'm going to just make that more like just a simplified box. And get a little bit of booty in there. Booty. A little bit too much, Ryan. Come on. Wishful thinking. I'm working on it. Squats. Look, what is going on with that? Oh, that's what's going on. This view is your lifesaver as a sculptor. So often this is the view that's wrong. All right, now just because I'm doing this live, let's check it. And make some quick adjustments. If I'm training, I don't like to do this because I'm training my eye, so I like to I like the pain. But when I'm doing this live, I gotta make sacrifices in interest of your guys' lives. Okay, I think that is good enough. I'm going to do one thing real quick. Like, there we go. Let's pull that gluteus maximus muscle down. This one's already pushing up quite nicely. And then I'm just going to push them all inside the form a little bit. Okay. I believe you. There we go. Now, let's duplicate this. That way we have that forever and ever. Let's go transform, split mode, fill in any pockets. We don't, in order for this next step to work, you don't want empty spots. I mean, I can get around it, but it's just better not to. Sweet. All right, with that done, let's go geometry, and we're going to go into probably Dynamesh. I don't really need the groups. You can kind of try to keep them. No. Yeah, let's just one cohesive piece. And then I don't like Dynamesh topology to sculpt. It's not bad, and some people use Sculptress. And I was talking to the Pixel guys. I was doing the ZBrush a stream during the ZBrush live, and they were like, "You don't use Sculptress?" And no, I don't use it. It's a newer feature, and it just doesn't affect my topology, my workflow, because it's so easy for me to just Dynamesh and then ZRemesh and then use subdivision histories. Newer workflows will use Sculptress. It's just if you don't have lower subdivision levels, like it's like shooting yourself in the foot. There's so much power in having them. This is such great light when they turn these things off. It's amazing. And you can see that guy back there. Wow. All right. So we do this, Dynamesh, and then I'll just go in and say ZRemesher,
You could leave it at auto and adapt. Like, I don't think it matters, but if you ever need to go less, you just say half. I don't, like 6,000's fine. I'm gonna divide it. I mean, ultimately this thing's gonna go up to 1.5 million. So I don't really care. But I don't go up there to the top yet. You know, I'm gonna go probably to 300,000. That's a reasonable first starter for me. And now we're gonna get in and start to sculpt, right? And I'm gonna share with you this my structural phase for building this. Vlad, is it all business? What about love? What's love got to do with it? Come on, Tina Turner, man. Pick it up here. Come on. Juiced, I find sculptress useful when very quickly creating lots of shapes. Yeah, sure, that makes a lot of sense. And then you can always remesh, 100%. Yeah, and in fact, it sounds like it's just a dynamic Dynamesh for you. So, all right, what is the first thing that we sculpt? What do we need to be thinking about, right? Now, if we look at this now wonderfully lit sculpture, and if I trigger these lights, I'm gonna go turn them off. Give me a second here, guys. So now it's completely dark. So, do we have good light? Yeah. What, did you auto adjust? It did auto adjust. Come on, don't auto expose. Okay, should not be auto exposing. All right, lots of meat. Lots of meat, a little bit of meat, okay? But remember the general conception. Oval mass, rectangular mass. But then you can also go further. There's actually an oval mass within the quadriceps and the muscle, and then a smaller rectangular mass as it approaches the knee, right? In the lower leg, there's definitely this rounded mass as it comes down into this rectangular mass down here, right? We're gonna work on these layers of mental frameworks as we go. But we're also, hopefully today, and the reason why I really wanted to get in here today and focus on leg is because I have a new way to build the lower leg that I think is very empowering. So we're gonna look at the planes, the plane of the front. We're gonna look at the V of the underneath the knee, just like how there's a V underneath the elbow, there's a V in the knee. There's a lot of these little structures that help us. Up in this area, we're going to immediately need to separate the belly from the thigh mass, right? And as we do this, these are the structural elements. We're going to get the belly, not the external oblique, not the abs, belly, which is all of them. And then we're going to pull around and we're going to get the front part of the thigh right here where my hand is. Okay, and then we've got another, which we're going to have to implement, which is the gluteus medius here in the back. So then eventually we got to get the gluteus maximus, right? But it's going to be this front part of the thigh moves upward and wedges in, and then this whole gluteal mass kind of moves downwards. And this wedges upwards, this wedges downward into it. And this is George Bridgman talking about wedging and forms passing into each other and out of each other, right? So, and then the hamstrings are wedged upwards underneath the gluteus maximus, which pushes that out. Lots of good stuff for us to kind of get our heads around. Let's get ourselves back into ZBrush. I wonder why it auto-exposed. Cameras are not set for that. All right, so we're going to start our separation routine. Okay, let's see. I am thinking belly first, but I need to make sure that widths are accurate. Those are pretty accurate. I need to make sure that that ASIS, I know where that ASIS is, so it's right there. All right, so mentally, ASIS, pull your line down. Yes. And, okay. That's what I gotta build. Come on, clear it out. This necessitates me, I can take this a certain way. This is actually a muscle. It's a beautiful muscle. Comes down, right like this, and comes all the way down here to this mass, right there. So I can get right into the muscles right away, you know, and it's so easy for us to do, but I'm gonna try to avoid that. I'm really sculpting that line, is really what we're doing. All right, but let's talk. A lot more action. Okay, there we go. The pelvis is my first battle. That front plane of the pelvis. You might look and you'd be like, why did Ryan spend so much time on the front plane of the pelvis? We're just basically sculpting some dude's junk. Like, let's move on already, yeah? Like, I'm done, saw it, been there. We're like, come on, seriously. But I used to have this drawing teacher. You might have heard this before. I used to have this drawing teacher, a Hispanic, drawing, and I don't know where he was from actually. He learned to draw in Mexico City, figurative art. You couldn't really learn it in California where I was. That's how long ago this was. So he learned figurative art in Mexico City. And the first thing he said was, if you don't draw the penis, get out of my class. It's like a community college, right? So it's like, yes, I love this guy. He's serious. He means it, right? It's like it's important to him. All right. There you go. Sculpting the junk with Ryan. We're done. Thank you guys for being here. I'll see you again tomorrow. Fantastic having you here. All right, we got the front plane of the pelvis. And so now I'm gonna work my way around. And arguably I spent a lot of time on that. But that's okay, because I had a hard time finding that plane. Whatever. I'm not sweating that. But I do want to make sure that I come through and I start to get some of these other forms in here, like the side plane, and that I have a good solid sense of them. Now, right in this area, we have to start to know, like, what's our strategy. Side plane, I put the back plane in. This side plane is kind of indicated as well. And so I'm just gonna show you mine, like the way I'm conceiving of this. I'm seeing a line, and then I'm seeing, okay, so that actually breaks in a couple of places. It's almost like it goes like that. So I'm going to kind of work with something along those lines as a thinking process. Okay, so is that muscle? Is that bone? What is that? First thing off is it's just some random form I haven't even talked to you guys about. I'm just basically sculpting some random shape. Now, the other side, how can I conceive of this? How can we structurally, there's all these masses. There's TFL, gluteus medius, gluteus maximus, right? And so, and then not to mention this TFL, or the great trochanter right in there. So, you know, there is one conception of form. I think is Rick here today? Rick sent me a note and he's like, Ryan, dude, like, I just learned how to do the skull one way and you're doing it another way. Like, what the hell, right? This is the most common way of thinking about the glutes, right? And so what we're describing here is essentially a tire. And that tire, right? Imagine the center right there. It's going to come out like that. Like that. Does that part make sense? Can you guys see that? So it doesn't always, you can't like always see it, but if you map it, it'll be there. It is there. That structure, that form is there. If I was able to draw, you know, circles a little bit better, it would be even clearer. But that's my trick. It's not the only trick in the book, but it's, you know, it's a trick that if you put that in there, everything else falls into place like so much easier. It's ridiculous. All right. So let's go with that trick this time. I was going to try to shake it up. I like to break the hypnosis of learning. That's the TFL, by the way. This is the tire. So I'm quite clearly sculpting a tire cylindrical shape. But I am going to taper that tire down a little bit. Okay, because I'm following the form of the gluteus maximus, right? And it's coming down here. The hamstrings are moving in that side. So the hamstrings move inside. They pass inside of the gluteus maximus. The gluteus maximus passes outside of the hamstrings. Passing, wedging, all that stuff. Now, anything else I really want to indicate? Yeah, let's get the TFL here. This is a good angle to see something really kind of important. You know, to this point, we've actually just been focused on, but what I really want you to notice is that break, you know, that's a really important break. You need to put that break in there. That is actually the gluteus medius and its particular anatomical mass. So it creates a little ledge right there. But what I hope you get out of this, let me just undo that. First, I built a foundation, and then all I did is just add I don't know, like a couple 5 strokes, just added a little bit of a ledge. And that's the way sculpting is supposed to be. You're supposed to have everything kind of like a foundation, you build it up, and then it just suddenly starts to happen, right? So here's that wedge from the backside. Here's it from the backside. So I got that wedge here, but I don't have it on the left side. So I need to build a little wedge of the anatomical mass. And then I need to actually build the great trochanter and that form in there. So let's go forward. I'm going to build the main contour of that wedge. And then I've got my cool. All right. Might not be entirely clear what I'm doing, so ask if you got questions, but it's super clear to me, right? Like each one of those lines, that's important. That could bulge out more, that could dive in more, but that's all something that we'll get to, I think. All right, how are we doing? Now, I feel pretty okay. Let's just check it because, you know, again, I could be off somewhere. And especially with the way I work where I start to add form. I don't mind if things are popping out, by the way, because I am doing structure here. There you go. So how many changes did I make? Yeah, a little bit. I had to make it a little thinner. I let the bottom part get out. I almost always review this to be like, where did I go south? All right, we're in good shape. Let's go solo off split. There we go. What's the next thing we need to do? So for me, the next thing that I like to do, I mean, we got a couple of directions, guys. So I think in order for this to be a step-by-step, I'm going to do the knee. And then once I do the knee, then it creates these points in space that we can kind of triangulate the rest of the form. If I was doing this myself, I would hold the knee in my mind and I would just move down the form. But this is the part where when you're learning this anatomy, it starts to become like you don't know what I'm holding in my mind. Like there's a point on both sides of the patella, A and B, you know, that I'll have in my mind that I'm going to be drawing the vastus medius to and then the vastus lateralis to. So it's probably wiser from a teacher perspective if I give you guys the knee first. And then when we get to the lower leg, I'll get you the ankle first. But just know, like when I sculpt, that stuff actually just stays internal to me. All right, so let's start here. And the knee for me is a strap. So I'm gonna make it a strap. And I'm gonna try to find the patella. You ever have trouble trying to find the patella amongst all of that? So Stephen Rogers Pex has this great example. That's basically the patella. The patella is like this surface, it's got this little pit right there. And so the patella, fat, and then tendon. And then, you know, all these muscles attaching to it. But out of all that crazy, you're looking for fat on the side and a strap. And then everything else becomes patella. My mom is calling me. What is this? Okay. Hold on one sec, guys. No. Okay. All right, get back to work, Ryan. What are we focused on? Patella. Top of the patella, top of the patella. Down to the tibial tuberosity, and in order to do the tibial tuberosity, I'm going to have to do the V under the knee. Do you see that V? Okay. Now, as we move to the other side, let's see, how are we in spacing and placement? Let's move it a little forward. There's a lot of things to start to indicate on the side view, but what I'm going to do is kind of start to straighten this out a little bit. This is going to be muscles coming down into the fibula, right in there. So I'm just going to straighten that and push a kind of straightish plane upwards. And then you can kind of push a straighter plane downwards as well. But that, I think that'll work okay. Then we want the back. And for the back, I'm gonna carve around a little bit. I don't wanna mess with this line here. That's kind of the side plane, right? We want that to be the side plane. I don't want to push that in too much. I'm going to do a little bit of scalloping like this. Why am I doing scalloping? And it's because the gastrocnemius goes in this. So I'm just echoing that form so that I can build the muscle mass later. It's not that big a deal. Okay, hold on. Yeah. All right, now I got to find a place in which this squares here, right? So we've got our back plane. Can I assume a square right there? You got to do this work. You gotta work to say, where is that flat plane? Where can it be? So I'm going to move the strap of the patella. We're going to move that back. This is that side plane. And yeah, that's not bad.
and then move it down to the V at the bottom of the knee. Okay, cool. Is anybody feeling George Bridgman? Because that's what it's intended to be. And so now if I go into this knee and get a little bit more planar about it, let me just make the planes that I want to talk to you guys about. Okay, there we go. All right. And then the strap, okay? And then, so let's indicate that, sorry. Okay, that's gonna be the side plane. And then so we have a plane going this way, and we have a plane established here. Our cross section is what we're ultimately building. So let me just show you that cross section. There we go. Oh, go up here. We got to turn double on. Oh, it did that stupid start thing. Can I select the subtool, please? All right. So I'm trying to get flat plane, and then transition, and then this is my side plane, right? And then there's going to be some variation in it, but do you guys see? The reality is different because we got to go in and we got to find a bunch of things that are wending and moving into each other, but this is essentially what I'm trying to do. And ultimately, I'm setting myself up for success here because I'm going to kind of create this plateau, and then later on, the strap of the gastrocnemius gets added to that. Cool. All right, so let's show everything. And so that definitely shows. I can move that back in a little bit if I wanted to, although I'll probably do that, more of that later on. Okay. Anyways, there we go. Now, throughout all of that, I've created the cross section. Ultimately, that's what I'm doing, is creating the cross section of the knee. And just to help myself later on, why don't I just drag that knee structure down? So hold on, let's. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of that. Okay, focus. Let me get a little bit of distance so you can see it. All right, how's the bandwidth, by the way? Is it streaming okay in the audio? I'm gonna do the line of the tibia. Line of the tibia goes to the medial malleolus. I'm going to hide this. Okay, and then I'm just wanting to get rid of some of the bulk. It's like I'm excavating it a little bit. And I'm going to try not to do too much sculpting, but I'm going to try not to have too much crazy form too, right? So. And then once we've got the medial malleolus, then we can come over here and get the fibula, which is going to drop down. So I'm going to actually excavate that from this form. I'm not going to even add to it. And it comes to about right there. Yeah, about right there. And let's get that knee a little. Yeah, there we go. I'll adjust the rest of that later. And voila. Again, trying not to, I don't want to start sculpting the lower leg. That's going to be something for later. I could sculpt the foot real quick, but yeah, no, let's leave that for later too. Just trying to get, just chewing some edges. Okay. Whew. All right, I avoided disaster there. All right, now, I got to stretch. Are you all with me? Is this all making sense so far? I've actually already started to sculpt the lower leg. Like once you put the line of the tibia in and you start establishing those planes and you get the angle in, you'll see it's like it comes together like that. That's really what I wanted to get to you guys and show you today. But let's go into the upper thigh, and I'm going to show you my sculpting approach for the upper thigh, which is again, planes, structural masses. Sometimes structural massing fails. That's the most important lesson for the thigh. The structural massing can take your mind, like especially with the quadriceps, the vastus medialis and lateralis, like the lateralis is just weird. It's flat, round, it's weird. So when you start to do the structural massing of it, you can round it out and you have these giant outsides of your leg, right? Has that ever happened to you? So the vastus lateralis is best done with planes, with planar construction. And what this really tells you, should tell you, is that what I'm trying to teach you is a series of strategies that you apply. Because sculpting is problems. So you're applying strategies to problems. Some strategies work better for some problems than other problems. It's just strategies, right? So if you're going to create the torso, one strategy is the volume of the rib cage, then you plane it, then you find structural masses. It's all strategy, guys. This is my strategies I'm teaching you. We don't know what Michelangelo did, and somebody like Michelangelo probably wouldn't even know what the hell he did either. He's just a freaking god, and it's just like magic to him. Who knows? I don't know. I know what he did when he was 13 years old, and that shit looks like magic to me today, so who knows? All right, let's get to work though. With this, I could go in and say rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, abductors. That will lead me astray. I've been here before, folks. Instead, I'm going to envision a plane here. And that plane is also, and really this is going to decide the side plane. That does ultimately start to round a little bit, but really not that much. And so you'll see in my lectures, I actually go in and I'll pull a little red line down this way to really help you. In this case, I'm going to kind of crush through it fast. And so that line is that. And I'm partly going to follow highlight. All right, nice strong clean lines to help you see, right? And then once I have the boundaries kind of planed, then I will go in and actually adjust them because they are guaranteed to not be accurate. Okay. Cool. All right, you see that plane? I don't know what muscles are there. I don't know. There's a lot I don't know, but I'm okay with that. And now I'm going to just kind of try to find where the front plane. So that's that line. Where's the next plane? And so I think the next plane is going to be here. So that's what I'm going to try to find now. I'm trying not to get too caught up in details. I like some nice beautiful form, much as the next person. So I like to put the curves in and things like that. But again, I try not to get too caught up because that's all another stage. All right, and then once I've got that plane established, then I'll do the same thing. I'm gonna come in and let's get rid of that leg. Okay, that looks okay. And then now I'm gonna say find the next plane, which looks like it's gonna be this wedge right there. And then that's gonna be and lead us to the side plane, right? Can you guys see that? And so I try to treat it like that. Just a wedge coming down. Oh, get rid of that. And then I need to really get that. That needs to be clear is where that plane originates. Yeah, that's better. And then the side plane coming down. Remember I created that side plane right there. So this part can be like a little, like what did he just do? And it takes a moment to get your head around what it is I actually just did. But you have time to stream this. And then now we come to the back and we have everything defined for us here. So now we just kind of figure out how we want to round it. And then there's kind of a little bit of a V here too. But the V is just a strategy, right? It's just a little strategy I use. The V you're seeing here comes from the soleus, which originates there. Okay. Now we might go in and we might just say, oh, look, that's the vastus lateralis. And we give it some of its anatomical mass, right? We give it some love, some attention and say, oh, there you are. Awesome. I missed you. But we don't make it, the primary element. The primary element is the plane. Again, just going in here and trying to define some anatomical massing or nuggets. This is, what I'm doing right now is actually the precursor to finding nuggets in my working process.
Once I found the idea of finding nuggets, then it was like this phase became less relevant. But every now and then I slip into it. Okay. There's a particular gesture. It's in everybody's leg. There's always and then whoosh. So make sure, don't lose that. If you don't have it, then you just go back and put it back in, because you know it has to be there. Otherwise, people feel it. Okay. I'm constantly rotating and checking. And there we go. Okay, I'm okay with this for now. Anything useful there for you? Anything interesting? Luca, does the mentorship have pre-recorded videos of you working on your models? So it's the live session. Luca, it's the live session. You get, of course, you get the torso, the core program. All of those lectures are recorded. You get the live class, and then on top of that, you get the one-on-one feedback, where you put your model, you upload your model, and I give you feedback on the model directly. Does that make sense? Okay. I don't like it. There's still problems, but I'm gonna, in the interest of speed, I'm gonna move forward. So let's go do the lower leg here. And what time are we at? So I think we might only get, yeah, we're only gonna get one leg. The lower leg, I don't even know what any of this is. I don't care in the beginning. Do you see how I'm just putting together a box like I did for the hand? And I can extend the box up, right? So go ahead and just, whenever you make the box, extend it up. But you want a box. Even if you don't see it, because that's not what we have in the anatomy or in the form. You actually have something that's more complex. But this is how you set yourself up for success. Because now it's just a simple matter. Once I have the box, right? Like this is origami. Now once I have the box, then I can just, that form's a little weird. I can just structure that. And then what do you got? You got the form. It's so easy, but you set yourself up for success first. That's the most important part. All right, now I have not saved this, so I don't know what God is looking favorably upon me today, but I would like to take a moment to acknowledge his or her presence in us having a successful stream. Whew. Pedro wants to see the cross section of the upper leg. Yeah, it's done saving. And let's look at this guy. It's roughly the same area. So, rectus femoris, sartorius, adductors, hamstrings, vastus, lateralis. Okay?
All right, and then our goal, again, it's not to create, exact copy of the anatomy or anything like that. Our goal, we're gonna get there. That's when we get into the walnuts. I hate this messy form. Sorry, I cannot live with that messy form. And in fact, I need to divide this now because it's getting too choppy. And what's my stroke set to? This is so weird. I'm gonna set that to 0.02. It's too, there you go. There you go, that's better. Too noisy. Oh, I don't know why I didn't do that earlier. Such nicer strokes. Okay, beautiful. Okay, lower leg. You want it to be roughly the width, which I think we have. And make sure you get the medial malleolus to be high, because it is. Lateral malleolus to be low. Positioned from a side view. What's my embed? I gotta lower it now, it's a little too strong. And so now we will, in the video, I like to start from this side view, because this is one of the views that just gives people a lot of problems. So we're gonna start from this side view and we're gonna try to find our side plane. Again, even though it's not there, we square it because it's so easy to bevel. But if the square exists, life gets easy. Okay, so because I put some of the form in there already, this is already kind of here. Side plane. Let's get the front plane, which again, we kind of already did. And then now we get, we gotta go back into this one. Don't know why it keeps showing that. There you go. Now we need the side plane for this one, which is and then the back plane. And make sure you get the movement, right? Just because it's a plane doesn't mean that it's all just one direction. And so now we've got our flat plane already indicated for us. Well, it's actually more of a curve, and it actually has a form right here. So it's got a main contour that comes down like this, and then we would taper. So it's not a bad idea to get that main contour and then just pull that out until you have what should exist. Like that, right? Roughly like that. And then okay. Then we go into finding or defining some of the specifics of the muscles. This is the gastrocnemius, separate it from the soleus, separate the soleus from the bone, do the same thing on the back side here. We can say, start to define some of the specifics of the gastrocnemius there, separate it from the soleus, separate it from the fibularis, and some of the muscles happening there. Then we come around on this side, and just beveling this actually starts to make the whole thing work. And then, of course, get our little bit of a tendinous slip in here, and our foot isn't nearly tall enough. There you go. Okay. Voila. Hold the applause. Now I'm going to put little nuggets. I'll deal with all that a little bit later. We're going to do the foot, and then we call it a day in terms of understanding overall structure. But any questions about this and about the process for building this? Any questions? What was there? Was a question about perspective. Could you tell us what's your perspective focal length? That's it. It's 50. So. All right. All right. Any insights on how to get better at seeing the planes? Yes, I do have insight on that. So let's do the foot, and that'll be one of the next things we talk about. All right, so feet. Most important thing is to get scans, guys, to understand this. But then other than that, you really want to think in terms of, and we go over this in the leg, there's a whole section on the foot. You do have to understand about the bones, right? And I don't have time in today to, go through all of that. Like foot can be its own lecture. But let's get in and just give the Cliff Notes version. So in the foot, there are essentially 3 zones. Okay, this zone right about here, it's actually one group of muscles called the tarsals. And then there is the, it's actually right about there. This is going to be the metatarsals, and then these are going to be the little phalanges of the toes, basically your fingers, your toes, let's say. Okay, this whole area here is really quite interesting. This is the tarsals, but the tarsals are kind of actually divided in half. And back here you have like 1 or 2, I think this is the navicular, but this is definitely the calcaneus back here. And the calcaneus that's your heel. It's a big bone. And then you've got the other carpals that are tarsals, that are arranged around in the front. So we need to divide the foot into these 3 sections along the top, and then add a section in the back, a 4th section for the calcaneus. And so using that logic, the first thing I like to do is just get the calcaneus implemented, because the calcaneus is largely a rectangle. About right there. Okay, so
you can say that section. That is mostly calcaneous. And it's better if you just keep that relatively square. Later on, you can dive in and you can build form. But right now, if we keep it square, then we've got our planes established. All right, and then, so let me just finalize that so I'm happy. Yeah. And again, you're just imagining that as like a little box. I mean, that's all that is don't do that. As a little box that sits back there. Okay. Now, once we get to the end of the calcaneus, then we've got a couple of different really interesting shapes that happen. And many of the, that was silly. Come on. Whipping this thing around, man. I always hate it when people whip these things around. So there's a couple of ways to think about the conception of this. So for me, the easiest is to think about sandals on the bottom and then a wedge on the top. All right, so I know I said there's the tarsals, there's the metatarsals and the phalanges. And now I'm going to say, ignore all that. You do that and you put that in, but you put that in later. Right now we have to build the foundation. And so the foundation is form concepts, right? That's what we're doing here. So what is the form concept of a foot? And if you think about it, shoes are actually the perfect form concept. Not just the shoe, but the shoe has a sole and then it's got the body of it. How's my fan? Let me know if the audio is too, I have a noise canceling I can go into. So before I worry about anything else here, then next thing I'm going to do is take this calcaneus and I'm just going to make a shoe. And you can take your shoe off. Does that look like your shoe? Notice how your shoe's gonna pull out on the outside. Notice how it kind of dives in and then pulls out. How the toe is a little bit to the side of the toe is the biggest part, and then it's gonna dive down, okay? So that's what we want to do right off the bat, is try to give us that platform to work with. Don't even worry about what the anatomy is. You just want that platform. Then imagine that go easy, Ryan. Let's flatten that. Make sure it sits. I'm going to turn perspective off. Let's just make sure it sits. Okay. So I've done the calcaneus in the back of box. I've done a shoe from the bottom. Now I'm going to imagine that shoe, that form is going to be about that thick. And I'm going to push in to establish its form a little bit more. And I'm going to separate it from the wedge at the top. I'm going to pull in from the calcaneus to the calcaneus. Flatten the top. Okay, and there you go. So that's the inside. We're not done, obviously. You don't have to do what I'm doing right now. I'm just trying to make it like really obvious. On the side here, you can actually taper it. You can start to have that coming down. On this side, it needs to be a little bit thicker. Okay, everybody got that? Then we're going to create the wedge. So the wedge is going to have
a form, and then voila. I'm not even sweating anatomy right now. Okay, there you go. Okay, let's check this. Okay. All right, there we go. So that's a decent shoe kind of setup, right? Let's close out and go into solo mode. Hopefully I'll show you, like, once you have this, it becomes really easy to kind of lock in the rest, right? But does this make sense? Do you guys get this? Make sense? Let me look at the comments here and see. Starting to rain. Yeah, that's this place. But how is that? How's that as a starter form? Not worked like this? No questions? It's done so well, Ryan, I got no questions. Awesome. Okay, great. All right, now this is the magic. Like when you set these forms up, the rest of it where you just go in and you find the individual forms, it just gets easier, right? And so we're already at 1:30. I was supposed to do these for 45 minutes. Obviously, I can't keep a timetable. But that's going to be the last thing I do. I'm just going to go in and start to work on these guys. And just, remember, the anatomy class is open and it closes on Sunday. So we got a lot more of this stuff there. Let's go ahead and duplicate this. And yeah, so let's save it too, so I don't really get screwed here. Imagining high quality 3D scans. There are, if you go to ArtStation, there's one guy that's putting them out. I've totally forgot his name. I'll see if I can't remember it for tomorrow. And then 3D Scan Store does quite well too. Okay. Malem, question about seeing the planes. This is kind of my answer, which is, when you're building the forms, this is where your planes come from. You can't do this form concepts without starting to think about planes as well. So highlights. That's us seeing these planes. So in a sense, this exercise and this kind of work is what you need to do to be able to get better at seeing planes. But I like to use the highlights. Okay, focus, Ryan, get to work. All right, I'm gonna get to work. I'm gonna pull a line in here, this fat here, and then I'm gonna create the arch. Everybody's got an arch. Fallen arch, an arch, whatever. Boom, 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 boom. So I know that form, then that's gonna come down to this form, and then I'm gonna lift the toe slightly. I am not really sculpting what I see. I'm sculpting what I know. So if you struggle with these things, a lot of times it's just, you don't have a concept. You have to, that's what the training is all about, is so you can learn, right? And every art is like this. In music, you can't even hear a bad note sometimes. You don't even know what key something is in. You have to learn that. Might be nice. I noticed my form creeping, and it's because I didn't actually, which I should have done at the original phase, but I didn't have the length correct. Or the width. Wow, what an oversight. Okay, there you go. Now I'm starting to feel better. Okay. So I am thinking of a wedge. That's then going into like a little cylinder, right? And so I see this as a little cylinder, and then I see this as a wedge going into that, and then they're all going into a bowl right there. So those are the forms that I'm kind of indicating as I go through. Okay, the rest of the toes are going to all kind of fall off. So let's get that proper arc about right there. Not too shabby. They're going to have a step pattern. Bottom step, top step. There you go. And so they'll go shoom, and then down. And then it continues down for the part that the scan doesn't have. So I need to have 1, 2, 3, and then I create their stair step. Like that, right? So let's go and make sure that we're within range. So yes, yes. And then after that, we can start to try to separate them and start to define them individually. Probably better to slow down there. BDS. Okay, so you see we're starting to get them indicated. You guys still feeling me? My brain is, I'm starting to lose it. See how I'm starting to focus on other things. It's telling me I need to take a break. 2 hours of trying to keep my shit together as I teach this is a little bit. All right. All right, now little nuggets of form. Whew. But first, what did I do? Before I even got into this stage where I'm actually, starting to spend, in my opinion, too much time messing with this stuff. Like, when you guys start thinking about this stuff, I start worrying, like, is your foundation okay? Do you have everything you need, in the basic side? But you see it's starting to work, right? And work from a distance. Let me zoom it in because you might be, I don't know what your screen resolution is. And then it falls apart. That's what we want. We want this to really look good from a distance, and then we just start to make it look better and better and better the closer and closer that we're able to get to it, right? And there might be a phase in this where we have to go in and redo the topology because it's like already a little janky, so to speak. Right in here where this thing really starts to fold in on itself. You ever look at pinky toes? Like, they're weird, right? And then we can just push in a few notes. Pull out a few notes. And it all comes together. But it's built on a system. A process. I'm not far off. I need to fix a few things, but ultimately not terribly far off, on that. So if we come in and, celebrate like this work, let's turn perspective. Yeah, there it is. Let's go, bomb. Tell me some things you guys learned that you think will be valuable moving forward. I am exhausted. Okay. Voila. Save this beast. Whew. Okay. How was that? What did you learn? What did you pick up out of this? Leave it in a comment so I can see this and get a sense of like what really made a difference. But you can see like in, 2.5 hours, I talk it through, I explain it. Hopefully it goes step by step in its process. But this might look messy, but at this point I can do whatever I want with this. Like it's super easy to refine the surface now that I have the notes there, which hopefully is something you picked up out of the torso session, the first session. So structure and these structural masses, again, very Bridgman-esque, but this is really the missing piece that most people don't acquire. They don't get this sense of things locked into place, and so their work floats. And I used to be ashamed of this stage. Like this is actually my love. I love this level, and I used to think I have to finish it, and if I can't finish it, if I can't do Richard or something like that. And it was actually students that got me, like they really got value out of these particular sculptures and this look. And I've since then started to really just learn to love, the process. Again, I can refine this in neoclassicalism in less time than it took me to get here. But knowing this structural phase is what levels you up and gives you the capacity to kind of invent form and work with things when your model's not really there, right? And so we had that question of earlier of like how to get the planes and think about the planes. And so the step number one is you look down models. And step number two is you build form without the model present. And you really start to ask yourself, like, where does something transition? A lot of the foot I could have done without looking at the model. The model really wasn't relevant except for proportions. But the proportions, I mean, I could have changed those after the sculpt too. It's not a big deal. It's not like in clay where, the proportions are adamantly the first thing because you can't just grab a chunk and, but in the digital world, we don't have that concern. So we think differently. All right, let me look at the comments and I'll put you guys here and remember it is all live. Enroll now, check out with the live class, with the one-on-one mentoring, whatever kind of works for you. Let's see what people picked up out of this. So, lots. Thank you guys so much. Let's see. Notice the overall workflow theme is to focus on your volume first, establish your planes, create structure, and then walnut time. Volume, planes, structure is what I learned. Well, gesture and rhythm before volume. As a function of volume, before volume, but yeah. Let's see. Malim, to resist the urge to build muscles too soon and focus on form and planes until all is ready. That is worth the price of admission there. Don't just sculpt, dissect. I love it, Tink. Workflow, the flow of shapes. Oh yeah, this is what you learned. You learned the workflow, the flow of shapes in some proportion, also noticing planes. Power of process. What is structure? Structure is the relationship between parts. You triggered me. Teresa, it was cool seeing this type of foundation on a posed figure.
Imaginic. Bridgman was the first person I studied for figure drawing, so this makes sense. Fantastic. Pedro, the importance of structure is such an important reminder. Ziad, planes first, fewer brush strokes to have a good structure, and then I'm free to do whatever I like with the form. Yeah. Ailey, Robert Brodum, Hendrik Goltz, Paul Richet, Richard McDonald, George Bridgman, Dan Thompson. Important names since day one. Agreed. And if you guys, just as a reminder, if you haven't, let me just show you Dan Thompson. When I was learning, Dan was back then sharing some of his knowledge too. But he's a great guy to go in and study, and specifically if you're wanting to know about planes. So he's a good one for planes. Like, this is a lot of notation of planes. And a plane is where basically the light shifts. You go from a one value structure to another value. A little bit like highlights. And anyways, he's a great one to go in and really start to figure out a little bit more about what we're talking about with this idea of planes. Okay. All right. I gotta go eat. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys being here, for giving me this opportunity and spending the time on these. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow for the last one, where I hope, what are we going to cover? I hope it's the head. No. I leave the head. It's probably wise to leave the head. We would probably do the head anyways, but I want to show you guys, the idea was learn how to do this on your own. What's your checklist? I might do that in the context of the head. I think that's fair. So, all right. See you guys later. See you tomorrow. Take care. Remember, registration's open. 3 days left. All right. Bye.